Hello from Sagara at SagaraOnline. Welcome to today's interview with Julianne Eanniello. And I'm very pleased to have her on here today. She's a very experienced facilitator in the Killer Bee inquiries. She works at the Killer Bee Center for Recovery at Palm Springs in California. And I met her through my training in the Killer Bee inquiries. I actually met her on video because I trained with Scott, and we had to watch videos. And Julianne was in the videos with another facilitator. So I kind of felt like I knew her even before I knew her. Anyway, welcome, Julianne. Welcome today. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Sagara. Happy
So,
to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. And I don't know much about you, so I kind of know what you do now, but I don't know anything really about how you got to where you are. And the idea of the interviews was really to get a sense of people's progression into the spiritual life and how they ended up doing what they're doing. So I don't know if you could start it's up to you, but somewhere early on.
Yeah, early on. I think it does go back early, way early, that I didn't even realize what I was looking for, when I was younger. I just always knew that I was unhappy. There had to be more than just this. Always wondered, like, who are we? What are we here for? Who am I? What is the point? What is the purpose of life? And even like at a very young age, like 10, 12, and then into my teenage years. And I think it's probably in my 20s where I started getting interested in holistic healing. So, using homeopathy and, natural forms of medicine and that kind of thing. I think in my early 30s, I became a vegetarian. That lasted about 12 years, and then I ended up getting really sick, and so I'm not vegetarian anymore. But I just saw this like progression. There was a point, I think it was in my mid 30s, where I think one of the turning points for me was my cousin's daughter died, 12-year-old daughter. And that was just shocking and devastating. And that just really brought up all those thoughts again about, like, what is the point? What is the point of all this? Why are we here if a child can die? It just didn't even make any sense to me. And so it kind of led me on this path, this search. And I started out with I'm going to use the term new age kind of stuff. I did a lot of energy healing. I was a Reiki teacher for a long time. Reconnection, I did that kind of energy healing, chakra clearings, all that stuff. And ended up going to a school called Heart Awakening in Arizona, which is not there anymore. Actually, I was going there because I worked in banking for 25 years. Wow. And I was really just tired of, tired of the corporate world. It just didn't feel right for me. So I was looking for a new career, right? So what I realized, of course, after going to the school for a while was like, oh, I'm really here for me. This is for my own healing and my own exploration and spiritual work. So that ended up closing, and I ended up doing a process called The Journey by Brandon Bays. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
No.
It's a really beautiful process. So I went through that whole facilitator training, got certified in that. I was doing that for a little while, all still while working in the bank. And then I remember at the last course, the final course for certification, Brandon mentioned the name Gangaji. And I'd never heard of a Gangaji. I didn't know what that was, or if it was even a person she was referring to, but something in me went, oh, I have to pay attention here. Like, I need to know what this is. And so I just wrote the name down, and then I forgot about it for a couple of months. And when I came across my note, I looked it up and saw Gangaji, and looked her up, and non-dual teacher. And so that was my introduction really into the non-dual teachings. And I went to see her several times when she came to the East Coast. I lived in Connecticut at the time, Connecticut and Rhode Island. And that just felt like everything I had done before were like stepping stones to get to this.
Yeah.
And I had just amazing, like, blown wide open, like, no self experiences, a lot of those just in going to her retreats. But of course, every time I came home, like mind would come right back in, right? Like it'd just be like completely blown wide open and then like very much in identification.
Right.
Um, and so something in me kind of knew that I needed a teacher that I could actually work one-on-one with, because she had so many followers. She wasn't working with people one-on-one. And I eventually found Scott. I don't know if you want to hear the story of how I found him, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I saw something. I saw a video that he did. I don't remember if it was on the website Never Not Here or if it was somewhere else, but I saw a video. I think he was doing a talk with Jeff Foster. And there was just something, my pull was more to Scott than to Jeff. Like there was something about him that really just pulled me in. And so I ended up looking him up. And I saw that he was going to be doing a talk in New York. And so I just emailed him and I said, I live in Rhode Island. I see you're going to New York. How about you come out and do a talk where I live? And then we'll get you to New York after that. And he said, okay. And that was kind of the start of it.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, that's how I met Scott. It just felt like he had something that maybe I guess saying that I didn't have is not the right way to say it, but like he had something that I was really drawn to.
Right.
So I ended up working with him one-on-one for a long time. He lived in Indiana at the time. I was in Rhode Island. Brought him out a lot to do workshops, retreats. I even traveled with him a few times around the country to do workshops and retreats with him. And there was a point where he wasn't doing the inquiries then. He was doing more just the direct pointing style. And there was a point where I felt like I was just recycling the same thing. I would have these, same thing would happen. I'd have these just blown wide open experiences of no self. And then a few days later, just like right back into suffering and identification. So I actually had the thought that, well, maybe I just need a different teacher. Maybe this just isn't the right thing. But something just held me in place. I actually saw, like when I had that thought, I just saw like this vision of his face, like huge, like somebody saying like, nope, stick with this, stick with this. Well, the next time I met with him, he said, I'm going to try something different with you. And he did the inquiry. And that same story was a victim story I'd been working on around health issues. And I can talk more about that later. Once that fell, the next week that I worked with him, for the first time in like months, that story didn't come back. I was looking at something different. I was like, he is really onto something here with
Yeah.
these inquiries. And so worked a lot doing the living inquiry. It was called the living inquiries at the time. It was before the Kilby inquiries. And eventually he said that he was going to be training some people to facilitate others because he was getting busier. And so he asked if I wanted to learn it. And of course I said yes. So there was a small group of like 8 of us who were in that original group who learned the living inquiries and started working with people. And then eventually more people found out and wanted to learn it. And so he said, who wants to help me train? And I'm like, I do. So yeah, I actually developed most of the training program, the Living Inquiries training program at the time. Fiona Robertson, I think you know her well.
Yeah, yeah.
She and I trained a lot together back then. So I was training, I was facilitating, and then eventually Scott wanted to work with addiction. And he wanted to open an addiction treatment center because he had a lot of addiction in his background. It's not in my background, and he asked if I wanted to move to California
Wow.
to come work at the treatment center with him. And I said, sure, why not? What else am I going to do? And then eventually I actually became his business partner. So we're co-owners of the Kilby Center.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
That's
quite
kind of
good.
that's kind of the short version of it. There's a lot that
Yeah.
went on in between there, but
No, that's quite a journey. And
yeah.
so can I ask you just a couple of things? So
Yeah.
you know when you were doing all the Reiki and the energy healing and things like that, what do you think of that now?
I went through a period where I was kind of dismissive of that.
Mm,
Like, oh, that wasn't it. This is it, right? Like, oh, why bother doing that? And
yeah,
now I just feel more open to anything.
yeah,
Like there's nothing wrong with those things. They're great. And they can be really useful for people. And I don't do them any longer. Occasionally, I will do it with a client at the center if I feel like they need some of that.
Mm.
But I don't typically do it anymore. But I'm also not. I don't have a problem with it. I think they're useful. They're nice
Yeah.
practices.
I was just curious because I've recently gone back to doing Reiki, and partly because of my health conditions, but
Yeah,
I feel held in a way there that I think I've said this before, but I feel held in a way there that I don't anywhere else, and I
yeah,
was quite dismissive of them. When I discovered non-duality, I thought,
yeah,
I found the way and all that, but
yeah,
now I'm much more kind of mellow about it or something, or
yeah,
it's easy to dismiss it, so it's refreshing to hear you say that, and
yeah. I went through the same thing.
yeah, yeah,
It's like,
sort of
oh, done with that.
yeah, seems to get a bit extreme non-dualist. That's a
Right.
phase that people go through, isn't it? But
Yeah.
and 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 with Gandaji, is it Gandaji? Is that right?
Gangaji. Yeah.
Gangaji, that's it. Yeah. What do you think was happening there? I mean, was that people talk about darshan, don't they? About the presence of someone, or do you think it was just why were you getting these experiences on her retreats? Do you think?
It's a really good question. I think I mean, that was the point of them, to have these openings, right? To recognize yourself as no self. And,
Yeah.
it was very, very, I want to say the word that wants to come is desperately drawn to this enlightenment and awakening, because I didn't want to be me anymore. It was so uncomfortable and so painful to be in this body and just to be me, that I didn't know this at the time, but I was looking to that as an escape from myself, right? But I think it was her presence. I think she has that experience. I think she lives there, like many other of these non-dual teachers do. And she also did her own version of inquiry,
Mm,
um, of continually pointing you back inward and allowing everything and being present to everything, and
mm.
talking about Papaji, her teacher. And I had many experiences, like just amazing experiences of him. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
I, I have this really cool story if you want to hear it.
yeah, yeah.
One of the silent retreats that I went to with Gangaji was at the Omega Institute in New York. So you're in silence the whole time, and I went there with the intention, like, I desperately wanted to get rid of my mind because that was the problem, right? So I went there with the intention to, like, just give up my mind, just give it up. And so as the weekend went on, it just got deeper and deeper into the silence, and it was just feeling so great. And then that last morning, I was sitting on the porch of my cabin, and there were people like next door talking really loudly, and it was very disturbing. Like, oh, like it's interrupting this silence. I don't like that. I'm really just loving being in this silence. And so then I went to the group, and when she comes in, she sits, and everyone sits in silence for a little while. I closed my eyes, and I had this experience of Papaji. It was like I could visually, in my mind's eye, I could see him standing in front of me, and my intention was to give him my mind, because ultimately I felt like he was my real teacher at the time. And so I was holding this bundle in my arms that represented my mind to me.
Mm,
And he said, "Put it down." So I put it down. And then he said, "Pick it up." And I didn't want to pick it up because I thought he was trying to trick me, because he used to trick his students, when he was alive and people could actually see him. So I wouldn't pick it up at first, but he kept saying, "Pick it up." So I finally picked it up. And then he said, "Now pick up silence." And as soon as he said that, and you try to pick up silence, you can't. And what came was like, you can't pick up what you are. And like everything, existence just kind of crumbled like a house of cards. Like I literally saw a house of cards just falling apart.
mm.
And there was just nothing.
Wow,
It
beautiful.
was really just like an amazing experience. And of course, the mind came back after that as well, but it was just another one of those experiences of, wow, this is really what you are.
Wow. How long did it take for the mind to come back? Did you have a period of?
I actually don't remember, because it was such a
Mm,
long time ago. It's probably like 10 or 15 years ago.
yeah,
I don't remember, but
yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, I just don't remember.
Yeah, I've seen videos of Papaji. I'm more familiar with him than Gangaji. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and 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 then you rang Scott, or you emailed him. I can't remember.
I emailed him.
All right, that seems
We,
very. Probably wouldn't have the nerve to do that. Is that just kind of who you are, or
well, I
sort of?
figured, what's the worst that could happen? He would just say no, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we went back and forth on email a few times, and
yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah,
What was it like to meet him then?
busted every idea of what I thought enlightenment was supposed to be like just in like the first few hours, because he was just such a normal guy. I was used to following teachers like Gangaji and Papaji, people who like had this, the guru more type um, energy.
Yeah,
And so, I picked him up at the airport, um, brought him back to my condo. He was going to stay at my condo at the time. Well, he ended up being allergic to cats. I had a cat. His CPAP machine for his breathing broke, so he couldn't breathe as he comes out like at like 10 o'clock at night. Like, I can't stay here. His eyes were bright red from the cats. So like 11 o'clock at night, we were trying to find a hotel for him to go to, but then we had to go to the store and I hope he was okay with me telling him this, get nasal strips. Cause like, I'm like, oh, I don't want you to die if your CPAP machine isn't working,
yeah,
So, I got back to my house that night and I was like, okay, like this is just real life. This is just present moment. Like this is what I saw as a clear, enlightened being, just like a totally normal guy, just a normal person.
mm,
And I loved that actually. That felt so much better than the seeking for the complete lack of identity, the complete no self. Scott's way is more the middle way. So
yeah,
you're actually embodied and here and living in the moment with
mm,
everything, all the pain, all the fear, all the love, like it's all here. And it's not denying any of that. And that's really what I loved about Scott and his message.
and how why do you think that didn't shatter? Because like a lot of people, that would have shattered the illusion, wouldn't it? They'd have just rejected him, I think. I mean, because I have, if the person doesn't meet the ideal, that they will just reject the person because they've got this projected image of what the ideal should be. So why do you think you were able to not to make the bridge between? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And I don't know.
Right,
I think I just trusted. I trusted him,
right.
because I'd already worked with him. Oh no, at that point I hadn't worked with him. So yeah, I don't know. Just something in me knew,
Okay,
like what I wanted more than anything was truth.
right.
And that's how truth was showing up.
Okay.
So whether truth was there's no such thing as no self, or I just wanted truth because I spent my whole life like just not really knowing or understanding, and I just wanted truth.
Do you still see him as your teacher now?
No,
Mm,
I don't see. I mean, in many ways, everyone's a teacher,
yeah.
right? But that teacher student relationship
Mm,
fell away, I think, a long time ago. As a teacher, a lot of people project onto him. Like I projected onto him and to Gangaji and Papa and like all these other teachers, right? And a lot of students do that. They project onto their teachers as they have something that I don't. Scott saw that and he didn't like that. And he used to say all the time, look for me, use the unfindable inquiry to look for Scott. And I did. And there's a fear like, oh, I'm going to lose him, or I'm not going to have that same kind of relationship with him. Well, at the time, that didn't happen. Once I saw there was no Scott, he was unfindable, using the unfindable inquiry.
do you want to say what that is? Just
The unfindable inquiry?
yeah.
Yeah. So the inquiry, this was part of the living inquiries. And it was all about, I don't know how much to go into here. So the Velcro effect, I can talk a little bit about that. Like the way the inquiries work is we look at thoughts, which are words and pictures, and then we work with body energies, which can be emotions or sensations or any kind of sense that we feel. So the unfindable inquiry is the process of actually looking at our thoughts, our words, our pictures, our body energies, feeling, allowing everything, but checking to see if it's what we think it is, right? So is the word Scott Scott? No. How about that mental picture I have of him? Is that Scott? No, it's just a mental picture. How about that feeling that I have in my body when I think of Scott? No, that's not Scott. If I touched his body, if I touched my own body, is that a self of some sort, the tactile sensation? So it's a process of dismantling identity.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Probably the easiest way to say that.
Yeah. Okay.
So I used that process to unfind Scott, and yeah, and it was great because I no longer had that sense of he's better than I am, he's enlightened, he's this being I need to look up to, he's the teacher, I'm the student. That just kind of all fell away with that, and I actually felt closer to him after that because I didn't realize that I was actually putting a division between us.
Yeah, so you start to see him for who he is rather than what you think he is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice way to say it.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Okay.
And now we're business partners. We own and run the Killaby Center together. So
yeah. So do you want to say something about that, about the work that you do and why it draws you?
Yeah, so we work with addiction, we work with anxiety, we work with depression, we work with eating disorders, really trauma. Like we really work with just about anything. Spiritual seeking, people come just for that. Really, Scott is the one who was more interested in addiction, and that's why he wanted it to be an addiction treatment center. I didn't really care what I worked with. I just wanted to do the work because I love it. And I've seen how much it can help people. And through the years, we've been there for about 6 years. Through the years, the method has changed somewhat. So we're doing the living inquiries, which is a lot of unfindability. Now, a lot of people who were coming just to stop using the drug didn't really understand. They weren't necessarily coming for awakening. They just wanted to stop using their substance, or they wanted to heal from their depression or their anxiety or whatever else was going on in their lives. And so the Killaby inquiries came out of that. They're simplified versions to actually get to the same place. And they can be used for healing, or they can be used for awakening. It's like whatever somebody really is looking for, they can be helpful.
Right. Okay. Do you have a preference? I'm not asking you which one's better. I'm just asking.
I know. I use both. I use both, and I kind of just do my own thing sometimes. Like sometimes I don't really do either. I tend to combine them and kind of bring in pieces that I've picked up along the years from all the other things that I've done that I might bring into a session. So yeah, they're all great. I don't really have a preference.
And is the reason you love them, is that because you're helping people, or is it because of what you get out of it, or?
Because of what it gave for me. A lot of my pain and suffering has ended. Not all of it. I can certainly get triggered. Stuff still comes up. But because I've seen how much it's changed my life, that I know what it can do for somebody else. And I do see how it helps other people. And it does feel good when you're actually helping people and you see that, they're feeling better, or they're maybe for once in their lives not hating themselves.
Yeah.
It's just it's very rewarding. It's just so many different ways.
So what's your spiritual path now? Is it just doing the work on other people? I mean, how do you say?
People ask me a lot if I meditate. I don't meditate. I was never really a good meditator. I think my practice is just being aware of what's here, what comes up as it comes up, and being with it. That's the bulk of my practice. I work, obviously run the Killaby Center, but I still do private sessions online. I still do training, facilitator training. I certify people in the inquiries. Do my own work, self-facilitate. I get sessions, I give sessions, like that's my practice. But mostly it's just being aware of what's here,
Mm.
When it comes up and being with it. And there are times that, I need help. I need somebody to facilitate me if something big is coming up.
Yeah.
And so I'll call another facilitator and get a session. But mostly I'm able to just do it on my own. A lot of it I've always been able to just self-facilitate.
Okay. So you're using the living inquiries and the Kilby inquiries on yourself.
Yeah.
And bits of other stuff that you've learned.
Yeah. Mostly for me, it's allowing. It's just noticing what's here and just giving space for it. Not trying to stop it or shut it down. Noticing if there is resistance here and allowing that too. Just being present and letting everything just kind of move through in its own time. Just being aware.
Okay.
That works the best for me.
And there's one thing I'm kind of curious about, which is, do you notice? So, some people must come to you and they've had these kind of mini awakenings, let's call them, that say that you experienced with Gangaji, and some people haven't. And do you find a difference in being able to work? Are they very different to work with, somebody who's had that initial seeing, or do you find it doesn't matter at all?
I don't think it really matters.
Right. Okay.
Because everyone has the capacity to stop for a moment, get quiet, and notice what's here.
Mm.
Right. So as long as they can do that, and and I can help guide them to that if they've never experienced that before.
Mm.
Some people we have to go slower with. Sometimes there's a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And so you have to go slow. You know this. You've worked with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you have to go slower and more gently, and not bring up too much at once, or just really just meet them where they are. That's really it. And I do have a tendency to be persistent and push a little. So I'll test the waters. Like I'll see how far somebody is able to go. And then if they're not able to go very far, then I just come back and just stay with them where they are.
Mm.
But I'm with them the whole way.
Right.
I'm not pushing or forcing anything.
Okay.
Because some people surprise you. You think they might have, because there's a lot of trauma, they might not be able to go very deep or too quickly, and then sometimes they actually are. So that's why I kind of just test the waters. How far are they able to go? How deep are they able to go?
Mm. And you're not necessarily looking for an awakening experience with that. You're just trying to help them with where they're at, to be present in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I have that agenda that they should have an awakening experience, that's actually going to interfere with the session.
Yeah.
If anything, my only agenda is just to be present to them. Because when I'm really present to them, then whatever needs to happen in that session will happen. If I'm wanting something specific to happen, that's actually going to block it for them.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So where do you see it going? Where do you see it? Do you just think you'll just carry on doing what you're doing?
Yeah, for now. I mean, I love it, so I don't really see the need to do anything different, at least at the moment.
How different are you to say the person who was just getting into Reiki?
I'm very different. Um, so the Enneagram. I don't know if others
Yeah.
who will be watching this know the Enneagram, but I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, which is the perfectionist. Right. So, and I was wound very tightly, right? Like everything had to be perfect. I had to be in control of everything. There was just this constant tension in my body of just needing to be in control all the time. And underneath that, of course, was, for one, like the core story is I'm not good enough. So that was my core story. I'm not good enough. So that need for perfection and to be in control and have things a certain way was all to overcompensate or to compensate for that sense of being not good enough.
Mm.
So I like to say I'm a recovering 1 because so much has changed. I mean, I'm just so much lighter. There's so much less suffering. Physically, I've had a lot of health issues. And the inquiry has helped a lot with that. I think the inquiry has mostly helped with my victim stories around it. Ended up finding a really great doctor who actually knows I have fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, and tried many things over many, many years. Some things helped a little, some things helped more, but nothing has really helped the way this particular doctor and his protocol works. So we'll be on that for the rest of my life. And the inquiry has also helped. So it's helped when I'm caught up in the story around being sick or around my pain. If if I happen to have a lot of pain, my victim stories can come back in, right? And so the inquiry and the resistance of it. So the inquiry can help relax the resistance and relax those victim stories. And the whole why me, and like early on, especially when I got it, I was pretty much incapacitated for 4 years. I couldn't work at all. So had a lot of fear. All those stories, everything just feels so much more open. Like there's so much more trusting. I've even said a lot that like it feels like the universe is conspiring to support me, right? In spite of myself sometimes, right? And so there's just a lot more openness and trusting that no matter what happens, I'm going to be supported and I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, that's lovely. I don't know if you saw. Well, I know you mentioned. I interviewed Renu Aurora this week, who was knocked over by a bus, and the bus had landed on her leg, and she'd stayed there. Anyway, it was painful, and I had aches and pains today, and I was thinking, this is nothing compared to that. But it's like it's really interesting, isn't it? That pain without the label is a completely different experience to pain with the label.
Yeah, it's love. It's like that's been my experience. Pain without the label and without any resistance is just no different than anything else, and everything is love at its core.
So do you subscribe to this sort of belief? I mean, I know it's a belief, or it's a story, but is it helpful for you to think that life brings adversity to help your spiritual growth? Is that the way you think? I mean, is your illness?
I think I used to think that way.
Mm.
I don't know if I believe that anymore. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
just what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. It did facilitate spiritual growth, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I ended up losing my job when I got sick because I couldn't work.
Yeah.
Lost my house, lost my condo, ended up living with a friend for a year. I was on disability for a while, but then as I was getting better and as I was doing more of this work, I didn't need to be on that. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's all, I don't know.
No, I'm just curious because I quite like that story, but much as I know it's a story, but I think Tony Robbins said something about if you're going to have a belief, it's more helpful to have a belief that's useful. So I sort of think that's kind of a useful belief for people. But
yeah.
But yeah, okay, yeah. But from a direct pointing point of view, it's just happening, isn't it? It's just what arises is just what arises.
Yeah. It's what's happening. And, these inquiries really have given tools to handle whatever's happening.
Yeah.
To be with it.
Yeah. And you're quite heavily involved in the community. Where do you see the community going? Where would you hope that went?
It's still a fairly young community, and there's just been so much going on there. I think we're trying to find our direction as a community. I think that's still unclear where it's going. I hope to see it grow. I hope to see more people get interested and involved and doing this work and spreading it so that, everybody, if not everybody in the world, I know that's a little too much to hope for, but it's so helpful. I think it's so vastly needed, this work right now. And there's a lot of other people and a lot of other communities and methods out there that are doing great things, in the world. But I think there's such a need for this kind of work to help people with whatever's happening in their internal experience, because there's so much division in the world right now.
Yeah.
And I think if people can start to learn to look inward, it all starts here. It all starts within us,
Yeah.
that division, right? So, I don't know. My hope is that this work spreads and more people get to experience it and learn it and learn how to do it for themselves, right? Because really it's about, not, you shouldn't have to go to a facilitator constantly to deal with stuff, right? It's really, we want people to learn how to do this on their own so that they can be okay no matter what happens. That's what we do at the Kilby Center. We do a lot of education. We train people how to do this work on their own so that no matter what happens out there when they leave, they can handle it, or they have the tools to help them get through something.
Yeah. I mean, I work in mental health, in a community mental health setting,
Yeah.
and I find that it's really interesting because a lot of people come in and not everybody wants to do the work on themselves. That's my experience. It's like
Yeah.
I know you've got this amazing tool, the Kilby Inquiries or the Living Inquiries, but often people, they want to be helped. I think there's a stage, isn't it? Perhaps it's a bit like searching before awakening. It's a bit like there's a stage of I want to be helped, and that has to fall away. Is that your experience? Yeah,
Yeah, it's like they want someone else to do it for them.
yeah, or a pill, or
Or a pill.
something.
I used to have a friend who would say, "I just want this awakening pill," and I used to say to him, "You are the pill." Yeah.
Yeah, but I find it quite frustrating. You know, it's quite frustrating when you've got this amazing kind of. Well, I feel I can help people if people want to be helped, if they want to know how to do it. It's like you've got this gift, but actually often um, they're not receptive to it. But a bit like I
Yeah.
wasn't many years ago. I remember people would say stuff to me that now I think, oh yeah, but back then I was kind of just writing it off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think when we're ready, and nothing can make that happen. I like to see it as we're planting seeds sometimes. I've said that at the Kilby Center a lot, because we never know what someone is going to get. So we might have someone who um, didn't resonate with the work or didn't like the work and just ended up leaving, and leaving angrily even. And then maybe a couple of years later we hear from them and they say, you know what, you guys actually helped me. This is where I am in my life now, and I didn't realize it at the time, but you really helped me. So you just don't know what seeds are being planted.
yeah, yeah,
Let everyone be where they're at. And
yeah.
yeah.
Do you have people that you look up to now? Then, I mean, do you still have people that you go to in terms of your journey, or?
I go to facilitators.
Mm,
If I need help looking at something, there's a few facilitators that I like to work with, and there is actually somebody who he's a facilitator, and he's also a coach, a leadership coach, I believe, that sometimes I've gone to just for advice
mm,
on something and how to handle something, and he just helped me see things from a different perspective,
mm,
which I found really useful. So yeah, I haven't actually gone to a coach for coaching,
mm.
but I don't typically, I kind of lost interest in non-dual teachings. I don't go to songs anymore. I used to bring a lot of teachers to Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, and to do talks and stuff, and I just kind of lost interest
Mm.
in that somewhere along the way. When I lost
But
interest in enlightenment, I lost interest in going to
yeah,
songs.
is that the same with books as well?
Yeah, don't really
Yeah,
read any of that stuff
yeah,
anymore.
yeah. Okay, okay, great. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, is there anything else? Have I missed anything about your journey that you could say, or do you think we've covered everything?
I think we've probably covered everything. I think it's ongoing. The journey is ongoing,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
It's not like there's an end to it,
mm,
because we're still here living in these bodies. Stuff is always going to come up, and it's living life.
yeah, yeah. Which is fine, isn't it? But I mean,
Yeah,
it's like for some people, it's the worst nightmare. Like
yeah.
for me,
Because of our thoughts, because our
yeah,
beliefs about something. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But yeah. yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted for you. You were going to say.
No, no, no. It's just, yeah, I think that, pe I don't know how to say it. People are searching for something. People are searching for meaning, and in a way, that doesn't materialize, does it? It's almost like that drops away, and you just be with what's happening. That is how it is for me, anyway. It's people might
Yeah,
say, "What's the meaning to your life?" And well, it's more about just being. Yeah,
just being.
yeah,
And with that just being comes, I know there's probably identity in this, but like really that sense of empowerment and really trusting yourself and being more authentic, and that's where happiness comes in when we're really authentic to ourselves instead of trying to make everyone else happy around us or trying to prove ourselves or trying to be good enough,
yeah,
right? When those stories that we're not good enough fall away, then we're just like, oh, we're just
yeah,
here, and here is actually okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Somebody said that to me just this week, actually, that almost it's like the sort of you have this embodiment phase, and then it really is just about showing up in the moment as yourself. Just in
Yeah,
true authenticity is really where it's headed.
yeah,
And I still notice that I'm not. I still notice sometimes it's I'm
yeah,
not. And I think, "Oh, what did I do that for? Why did I say that?" Or something.
yeah.
You know,
Been there, done that. Probably still do.
playing a role.
Yeah, or
So
fear. For me, it's like fear. There's fear underneath it. If I really look, then it's like something stopped me from saying what I needed to say, and there's fear there.
yeah,
And so I get to look at that and be with that.
yeah, yeah. Okay, lovely.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much, and really appreciate you coming on and talking.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you. I miss seeing you. I haven't seen you around in a while.
Yeah, well, you'll have to see me on video now.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing so much inquiry at the moment, but
Yeah.
yeah. But I'm kind of enjoying speaking to
You're
you.
a good facilitator, so I hope people do get sessions from you. You facilitated me, I know.
And well, you facilitated me, and I can say the same about you. It's mutual appreciation.
Oh,
So
thank you.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Sagara.